Are you hesitant to witness boldly for Christ? Perhaps it's because you don't like being treated unjustly. I mean, who does? But maybe you would be more bold if you had missile lock on the God who promises to do justice on your behalf. Well, that's what we find here in Psalm 10. The focus of this psalm is on the God who does justice. In verse 1, we see a petition to that God of justice. God seems distant during a time of great injustice. And then in verses 2 and following, we see the ugly profile of the unjust Jewish elite. They're arrogant, they trust in earthly prosperity, and they oppress the helpless within Israel. And finally, the psalmist calls on God to do justice. Look with me at verse 12. He says, "Arise, O Lord. O God, lift up your hand. Forget not the afflicted. Why does the wicked renounce God and say in his heart, you will not call to account? But you do see, for you note mischief and vexation, that you may take it into your hands. To you the helpless commits himself. You have been the helper of the fatherless." And then look with me at verse 17. "O Lord, you hear the desire of the afflicted. You will strengthen their heart. You will incline your ear to do justice to the fatherless and the oppressed." Now, any faithful Israelite could have prayed this, especially during a time of prosperity in Israel when the godless were oppressing the weak and the faithful. But it's also easy to see how Jesus could have prayed this psalm and used it to muster boldness to accomplish his mission. Jesus was afflicted and oppressed by the Jewish elite, that's for sure. The Pharisees and the scribes were arrogant, they were deceptive, they counseled together against Jesus to ambush him and ultimately to murder him in his innocence, to crucify him on the cross. But Jesus was bold with the Pharisees, wasn't he? And he set his face like flint to go to the cross. Now, how did he do that? Well, he looked to the Lord to do justice. Jesus prayed, "Arise, O Lord, O God, lift up your hand, forget not the afflicted." He trusted that God does see and that he takes injustice into his hands. And Jesus could cry out with confidence, "O Lord, you hear the desire of the afflicted. You will strengthen their heart. You will incline your ear to do justice to the fatherless and the oppressed." And sure enough, Jesus was raised from the dead. He was vindicated and exalted to God's right hand. Now, just as God was faithful to do justice for Jesus, he will likewise do justice on your behalf as you follow him. So you don't have to be timid when you hear Jesus say that the world will hate you and mistreat you. You can witness boldly and stand ready to endure injustice. So are you nervous about losing favor or even a promotion at work because of the gospel? Or are you scared to risk relationships by talking about sin and the need for a savior? Are you intimidated because you don't want to be called judgmental or narrow-minded or arrogant or unloving? Well, look to the God of heaven who sees those injustices, will strengthen you, and promises to do justice on your behalf. And be